And we are live. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome once again to the Writer's Room. We are very excited to have with us once again William Hastings to talk about the third book in his Vagabond series, The Cerulean Flare. Hello, William.
Hello, thank you for having me. Oh my gosh, three books already.
I'm amazed and so happy for you that you have 3 out so far, because I know how extensive this epic is going to be. And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Janelle is with us as well.
Yeah, I'm a fangirl. I'm just here to be a fangirl.
It's important that I bring Janelle on all of these live streams because if I forget something, I guarantee you she will remember it because she knows the lore better than I do. So we will to get between the two of us, we won't forget anything.
Hopefully, yes.
No, she's totally got your back on that. So for those who may not be familiar with your Vagabond series, tell us about it.
Okay, well, Vagabond Legacy is a coming of age fantasy story in the tradition of stuff like the Black Cauldron. It is a very dark, modern take on classic fantasy, but it is also very bright, very hopeful, and a triumphant story about overcoming inner darkness and outer darkness, and being a hero in a world that is very difficult to be a hero in. So this is the third chapter and the end of the first act of the series, the end of what I call the Fortunan trilogy, the books that take place in the country of Fortuna. This is everything from Spark is sort of coming to a head here. This is the if you're only going to read 3 of them, this is the trilogy to do it.
This is the 3 books. If you don't go any farther, you'll regret it if you don't read these 3 books.
Yes, if I were to be struck by lightning tomorrow, you would feel a decent sense of closure having read just these 3.
But I don't want closure. I want the whole damn thing.
So,
and I will say, from reading the 3 books, I'm in the process of reading the third one. You are bringing in stuff that was just like, I want to say, just something that was kind of like a blink of the eye and you'll miss it. And then you get an explanation in Cerulean Flare. I was like, oh shit, no way. Which I'm really appreciating this too. You're definitely tying up all the loose ends for this part of the trilogy, which is pretty cool. There's been a lot of stuff. There were things that I thought I was like, no, I got this. I figured this out. And then it's something completely different. Like, okay, never mind. I was wrong.
Yeah, and I feel the exact same way. When I first started doing Embers, there were a list of things that I wanted to resolve that I feel weren't quite wrapped up properly in Spark, and I got to some of them in Embers, and I'm getting to the rest of them in Flare. So you'll see a lot of stuff that you picked up on, or maybe not, in the first book, get tied up here. A lot of loose ends getting cleaned up.
So again, the order is Crimson Spark and where's
Opal Embers.
Opal Embers,
Flare,
and
yes.
now the Cerulean Flare.
Yes, colors and fire everywhere. The Cerulean Flare is, despite being the third book in the series, it is significantly shorter than the Opal Embers. I think that is both in part of it being the last in the trilogy and me maybe learning a bit to be more concise as a writer. So you may find that it's a bit thinner than the others if you pick it up. Oh, they look so good all together like that.
It's funny you say that because it doesn't look thinner. I've got the other 2 books on my shelf and they all look the same size.
Oh yeah, well that's good. Mine actually haven't arrived yet, if you can believe that. But that's
Are you serious?
Yeah, you don't get the Prime shipping if you're the author.
Oh, that's lame. I ordered mine and within 24 hours the book was there.
That's wonderful.
So you were just talking about length. Do you find that as you've been writing these books and you have like less and less that you need to explain, or more and more of the world just naturally gets built up, that you don't need to write as much? Or is it that is it that you're being more precise on your storytelling?
I think my plotting is getting a little bit better. I feel a little guilty, handing people a book that's 100 pages shorter. But I would stand by that it's the same quality as Opal Embers, and I would feel really guilty having scenes in it just to make it longer that don't actually contribute to the story itself.
I like that. I like that you write the stories as they themselves progress, and you're not padding it just to fill pages or other things like that. I know a lot of authors have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, and you never know. Book 4 might be, the size of all three of them put together in the end. It's unpredictable. The series is unpredictable, even on my end. So it's a journey. It's a journey for all of us.
Now, going back to a previous topic, if I remember correctly, you have 12 or 13 books planned. Is that correct?
In Vagabond Legacy, I have 8.
8. Okay.
Yes. So this would be, I guess, 1 through 3, the Fortuna trilogy you could call Act 1. So that's, establishing the world, the characters. Once the cerulean flare is over, the protagonists are going to go off to different parts of the world, and we're going to see things that we've talked about in the other books but haven't experienced.
Ooh, other continents. I love it.
And I like the fact that you're breaking it up into chunks of, here you can have a full story, but then of course there's the larger story. It's not doing a Wheel of Time epic where
no, I don't think I have the strength for anything quite like that. I have toyed with doing other books in this universe, in this series, that are sort of side stories.
Mhm.
But if those materialize, I think I'll probably keep them separate from the main 8.
You can always do novellas, like, I mean, a perfect example, even though it's not, well, no, it's a good series, but there's complaints I have about it, would be the Expanse series, where they had the main books, but there were plenty of novellas that followed a single character, which I actually think when authors do that, that adds to a series when you add in a small novella, just so you can get how do I want to say, not better feel, but you get to know the character more. So I encourage the novellas, but then again, I just really like the series, so I'm going to say give me a novella.
One of the people that the Cerulean Flare is dedicated to is an author who was a huge mentor for me getting started, Christopher Rocchio, and he's the author of the Sun Eater series, which is not only these massive science fiction tomes, but it has a lot of side stories, novellas, and short story compilations that take place in this incredible universe that he created. So I would definitely be open to something like that in the future.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now, it's not pertaining to Vagabond Legacy, but it is yet another series of yours. Rick here asks, I have a question about a VCW question. Do you think Gabriel and his sister of No Mercy, French nun that tackled a climate protester, would get along? Now, real quick, for those of you who don't know, please tell us about what VCW is.
Oh yeah, real quick, VCW is my other series, which at the complete other end of the emotional spectrum that Vagabond Legacy occupies. VCW is about an exorcist that is also a professional wrestler. Yes, he would be very into that. I often say that every time I see something like that happen in the news, I say VCW is real life, and we see more and more evidence for it every day.
I need to read VCW.
Well, you're in luck because the sequel just got its audiobook released last month. So we have those printed and in audio. It's been a busy, we already have 2 of my 4 planned releases in 2024, and it's not even summer yet. So it's going to be a busy year.
Wonderful. And you said that Opal Embers has just come out as well?
Opal Embers is coming out next month in audio. It should be May 3rd, May 4th, something like that. I have all the files. It's just a question of how long it'll take them to process. There's quite a few of them. Opal Embers has 79 chapters. But they are mastered and they're ready to go. Vic sent me the last chapter a few weeks ago, and I've listened to the whole thing. It is really strong, and I think you guys are going to like it.
Wonderful. And for those of you who don't know, it is Vic Mignola who is reading the Vagabond Legacy. So
yes, and doing an incredible job. But even more than that, he's passionate about the story. He's passionate about the characters. He calls me up and asks me, hey, did these two end up together? I just really liked this emotional moment. And he's such a genuine guy, and he's been great to work with.
I love that man so much. Only met him once, and it left a lasting impression.
He's got a really magnetic personality. Great guy to be around.
I hope to one day get to see him at a convention again. Unfortunately, where I live, I think he's been banned from all conventions, sadly, so I would have to go out of state. But that's because the people at Funimation are assholes,
right.
And I'll just leave it at that.
That's fine. That's probably all that needs to be said.
Yeah.
So, getting back to the Cerulean Flare, the setup to the Cerulean Flare is different to Spark and Embers in its immediacy. It starts with the four vagabonds that we met in the Opal Embers together. At the end of the Opal Embers, they decided to travel together and wage their little campaign against the Fortunan slave trade. When we find them at the beginning of Embers, they've been doing that for several months now, and with a pretty decent amount of success. They work very well together. So they're taking a day off. It begins with them taking a day off. I joke that this is the Vagabond Legacy Beach episode. As they're taking their little day off, their friend and partner Kokoleth, the mariner, washes up on shore, throws an egg up onto the beach. He's covered in blood. He's beaten to a pulp, and then he disappears, telling them to stay away from the water. No explanation, nothing else. They just have this egg and they have this warning. So before they have time to deal with that, before they have time to process what's happened, they are jumped by Corbin the Spotless, the main antagonist of the book, who is a hunter for the Grassend Trading Company. The Hunters were an organization that was mentioned briefly in the Crimson Spark. That was the organization that Quinnell was supposed to join, but did not wind up doing, obviously, because he became his own separate thing. But Corbin the Spotless completely decimates the vagabonds. He takes them apart. He destroys them. He is superhuman. Even Leo can't stand up to him with his star powers. He is beaten down by Corbin, and that begins the setup to the story, which is that the vagabonds are split down the middle. The boys and the girls separated. Leo and Jacko at the bottom of the ocean, and Zerrigan and Nea taken to the slaving capital of Fortuna, the true capital, Marlamite.
Ooh.
Did you want to go further? Because I was going to say some. I just wanted to say real quick, when he says immediacy, he's not joking. I actually kind of panicked when I started reading the first couple of chapters. I had oh my God, it's starting now. Oh, okay, this book is starting now.
Yeah, there's no time.
Yeah, there's all of a sudden, and I mean, when you say they're taken apart, they're not just taken apart, they are friggin' shattered. I mean, it definitely reminds you that these are still kids going up against adults. And just like the panic that, they're feeling all of a sudden, all of them are I can't do anything about this. We are so screwed. And to watch, it's also, I want to say in a way, they've had this success, freeing slaves and doing hit and runs, and they're riding high. So for them to be riding high to all of a sudden just basically being pimp slapped is the best way I can say it. And put back in their place of no, you're still kids. And just a reality sets in on them. And there, I'm going to stop there. You keep going, William, because I don't want to do any more. Hopefully I didn't spoil. Just wanted to say the book is immediate. It takes off. There's panic. These kids are put into a place that they do not want to be, that they've been before.
Yeah. So rather than having 4 separate stories that kind of weave together the way Opal Embers does, this has 2 distinct stories that each have 2 of the vagabonds in them. Leo and Jacko, almost immediately after being beaten down and captured by Corbin, are recaptured by a different group, by the Mariners that we have heard talks about but have only ever met Kokoleth. They're brought to a city at the bottom of the sea and held, forced to stand trial with Kokoleth as conspirators. Kokoleth is being tried for stealing eggs. Just like the egg that he gives them in the beginning, but that egg is there's more to it than that. I'll not go too far on that. But so Leo and Jacko are in this completely alien scenario at the bottom of the sea, fighting to survive. Just to contrast that, Zarigan and Nea are on dry land at the absolute heart of Fortuna's slave trade, at the beating heart of this operation that we've heard about for so long. This is the head of the GTC, the architect of the slave trade in Fortuna.
And while they're there, do you want to talk about who they meet?
Sure, yeah. I'll talk about who they meet. They come face to face with Abdul Hazad. Abdul Hazad is the president of the GTC and the person in charge of Corbin the Spotless. He is the brains behind all of the flesh trade in Fortuna, and he is the primary antagonist of this novel besides Corbin. Corbin acts basically as Hazad's attack dog. Hazad is in his 70s and is not the most powerful character, although he does, he is the only character in the novel up to this point in the whole series that has had access to a gun. We see guns appear here, and Hazad has one, and that renders him very powerful, even for a man who's much older. But he also has this superhuman attack dog working for him. So Nea and Zarigan are essentially at his mercy. Zarigan is enslaved. Nea is taken to be conditioned, to be transformed into one of these hunters. And she desperately wants to get out and save Zarigan because, of course, the last thing Nea said to Zarigan is, "It's your fault we're captured," because it kind of is. Zarigan, at the end of Opal Embers, encountered something in the Pulse, the place where she draws her magical powers from. She's a Delver, which is the Vagabond Legacy version of spellcasters. She encountered an entity that is called the Whisperer in Darkness, who almost killed her then and is now threatening to kill her again, to drag her into the Pulse and consume her. She cannot use her powers, so she is enslaved and helpless, essentially, before all these people. She can't use the one thing that might give her an edge. And because of that, she's forced to put her trust in a new character. And this character's name is Cesare. Cesare is maybe one of the more controversial ideas I've had. He's what's called a vitella. A vitella is a male slave with a disability that prevents them from being mine workers. So they're drugged and raised female against their will. So she doesn't know this at first, but when she meets him, he comes around to her quickly and they become friends. And the second he realizes that this is somebody he feels close with, he's a very broken down kind of person. He doesn't believe in anything. But when he meets Zarigan and he sees that this is somebody he could care about, somebody he wants to protect, all of a sudden he's one of the most masculine characters in the story. So Cesare is actually one of my favorite new additions to this, and his relationship with Zarigan is really fun and interesting. And he keeps her safe through her enslavement and protects her in a way that I think is genuinely unique, because it's a weird word to throw around about fantasy tropes, but I think that their connection is one of the more unique additions to this.
I am going to say, real quick, I just want to say, Cesare, I fell in love with him immediately.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Oh my gosh, I was so happy. Okay, you go first, Kat, and then I'm going to say my piece because, yeah, like that character is amazing, but I don't want to give spoilers, but I do have something to say. But you go first.
Well, I find it interesting that you said that if they're not able to work in the mines, that they are, drugged and then, raised and or treated as a female. It sounds like. So is this a eunuch by chemicals rather than by physical harm? Is that correct?
I would say like chemically, yes. I haven't actually. I don't actually think that any surgical things have been done to him, but he is on a drug that keeps him from growing facial hair, that prevents his he's not allowed to exercise, he's not allowed to build up muscle density, and that compiles with his own problem, which is he has like a calcium deficiency in his bones break very easily.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is another thing that I really like about your stories is that, everybody says, oh, it's the most unlikely of heroes, but no, your heroes all have every reason to not succeed. They enter the stories very broken physically, mentally, whatever, and they literally do have everything stacked against them, and every inch they earn. And so I like the fact that you introduce new characters and they are just as broken, just as flawed, and have just as many things to overcome. Nothing is easy for any of these characters.
Well, I appreciate that. And speaking of nothing. Oh, sorry, Janelle. Why don't you go first before I go off on another tangent?
Well, I was just going to say that you in your books tackle something that many people put their head in the sand or just don't care, and you child trafficking and like all the horrors. I mean, you've said what Cesare is, so I mean, it doesn't leave much up to the imagination of the situation that character is in. That's something I've actually found compelling, especially about the cerulean flare, because we've seen the victims of it, we've heard it, but now in this setting, as a reader, you are seeing it. It is there in your face. It's no longer in the background. It's not something that's just being talked about. The characters, some characters are now full-blown experiencing it, which I also I really appreciated, because the older kids are very protective of the younger kids, and you really see that. I'm glad that you put Nia and Zaragan together in this one, because you finally get to see their dynamic. The same thing with Jocko and Leo. It was nice to see the boys and the boys being together and the girls being together and seeing their dynamics finally. But
yeah, I wanted to do that because Nia and Zaragan are so fundamentally different. And Leo and Jocko are as well. And I wanted to sort of talk about the sort of different ways men and women, or boys and girls in this case, form friendships and attachments.
I'm not, like I said, not going to spoil, but there is a scene between Jocko and Leo that explains perfectly what happens when there are strong opinions involved.
Yeah.
And how boys and men handle it. And I was like, that is so brilliant, because I have never been a part of that, but I've seen it before growing up, and just how it happens and then how it's resolved. And I was like, that's so brilliant. You don't see that in books anymore. Not between two male characters. So I am very appreciative that you put that scene in at the well. That was brilliant.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I like that scene a lot too. It's something. You're right. It's something people don't talk about very much anymore. But it's one of the most obvious things in the world, especially if you spend a lot of time around adolescent, students. In my case, you see it every day. They say something nasty to each other. They throw a few punches, and then they're best friends 10 minutes later.
Yeah, that's My husband had to kind of explain that to me when my son would get into disagreements and fights with his friends. He told me sometimes you and your friends just have to punch it out, and then you grab a beer and you're good.
Yeah.
And so to have that scene in the book, I was like, this is great. This is one of those times where, you're a fly on the wall. You're like, this is the most fantastic thing I've ever seen. They're going to fight it out and be cool.
Yeah, and on the exact opposite end of that, you have the girls, saying, horrible nasty things to each other just before being separated and being put into this crisis situation. So Nea is thrown into a prison to be conditioned to be a soldier, having told Zarigan that the reason they're trapped like this is all her fault and she should feel terrible about it. And Nea, of course, putting her foot in her mouth. That's what she does best. But she really regrets it. She doesn't. She wants to look after Zarigan. She knows even if she doesn't particularly get along with Zarigan, Zarigan is her responsibility. And she wants to look out for her, but she's stuck. And Nea, in the depths of this new imprisonment, starts going back to some stuff that we've never talked about before. Specifically, the memories she has of her mother and that what that does to her. Nea had a really, really bad relationship with her kind of crazy mom, and the way she treats Zarigan is kind of bringing back these memories of the way her mother treated her, and sort of the cycle of craziness that her family seems trapped in, and she wants to break out of it, but she has that voice in the back of her head. And no matter what she does, it doesn't go away. It just kind of changes.
Honestly, I'm so excited about that because, Nea and her story and where she came from, that was the thing I really wanted to know more about, and I was glad that you just like gave little breadcrumbs of it in Crimson Spark. So the fact that you're now bringing some more of that up, I'm sure you're not going to reveal all in this book, but the fact that you're going to explore more of that and having her reflecting on where she comes from and where her reactions to things comes from, I'm so excited about that.
Yeah, so am I. It's fun. It's fun to finally open up these backstories and really, really go to town on the themes that we had there. This book is kind of all about wrapping up loose ends. We're tying up the slavery arc, which has been there from the beginning, but we've never actually been able to deal with properly. But here we have the Slaving Company as the forefront. They're the main villains, and this is going to end one way or another. Also, another major loose end we had from the Crimson Spark and through the Opal Embers was the dissolution of the Blackbriars, which were the main antagonists of the first book. Now, they were sort of scattered to the winds after Spark, but they still have quite a bit of influence in Fortuna, as we saw in Embers and as we're going to see here. I don't want to give too much away, but you are going to meet the final member of the Blackbriars High Command, and the Blackbriars story is going to come to an end properly.
Ooh, wonderful.
Okay, I think I know what character you're talking about, but I'm not going to say anything. But I was very impressed.
I'm glad. Besides talking about the differences between male and female friendship, which is one of the big themes I think of Flare. Each Vagabond Legacy book, and I don't think I've talked about this on the show before, but each Vagabond Legacy book is kind of centered around an emotion that can be destructive to somebody who is coming of age. The first one, Spark, was about fear. Embers was about guilt, and I would say Flare is about shame. The shame of letting your friends down, the shame of being helpless before a more powerful enemy, the shame of saying things to people you care about that you can't take back. And it's about what we do with those emotions, and I think that this one's going to leave people pretty satisfied.
Well, I'm also going to say the shame of their past. especially between Leo and Jocko, because Leo, where he's let Zaragan and he's more comfortable with them, and he's let them know things about his past. He hasn't been upfront with Jocko. And what I gathered from that is part of it is shame about what happened to him.
Yeah,
Which,
definitely.
yeah, and then also, like you said, when Nia put her foot in her mouth when I was reading that chapter, I was like, I wish I would smack you upside your head. What are you doing to this poor girl? And definitely when Nia, the voice starts getting at her again, and her shame starts coming through. The feeling of the shame, I see a lot of projection from what Nia and Jocko do in the book being projected upon Zaragan and Leo.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the cycle of being mistreated. Is that people tend. Cesare has a line in the book about how when you've been mistreated all your life, you start to kind of get off on the rare occasions that you're able to mistreat other people and be hurtful and unkind, and it unfortunately feels good to somebody who's been stepped on their whole lives. But it also, brings about this huge shame that you're hurting somebody the same way people hurt you. And that's another thing, is this sort of cycle of hurt that we talk about, the cycle of abuse, the cycle of trauma.
And I know that that's not a subject that you see much, or at least see honestly. So many times it's you already see the abuser full on into abusing others, and then later it's, oh well, they were abused as a kid, so that explains it, and it's just written off. They're still written off as being the abuser. It's interesting that you're getting these children at this crucial point in their time where they are transitioning from being children into adults, and watching how they deal with these situations, and how, as we've been talking about, that abuse comes forward, and they're having role reversals and how they deal with that.
Yeah, and I think I think modern media has conditioned us to imagine an abuser to appear a certain way. If I say the word abuser, I think people conjure an image in their head of what that kind of person looks like. And this book and this series shows that that's not always the case. They can look like anybody, they can be anywhere. And hopefully that'll serve, anybody reading this will be like, oh well, better keep my guard up at least.
No, definitely. And not only that, but especially in today's sensibilities, they really want you to think that abusers come in one skin tone, one sex. Yes, I'm using the word sex, not gender. One sexual preference, or they don't show how they come in all forms.
That's actually something I have liked about this book series. In the Crimson Spark, when you find out who Leo's abuser was, it's something that you see in the news media all the time. When an adult female sexually abuses a young boy, it is said as sex. If a male did it to a young girl, it's called rape. No, it needs to be called what it is. And that's something that's why I said, William, you're not shying away from stuff that a lot of people want to stick their heads in the sand and just say no. I mean, like, you're showing that there's all types of horrible people out there. A lot of people wouldn't write their books like that, which I appreciate. It's all.
You can't afford to dance around the issue, especially 3 books in. It's going to come up and it's going to be confronted and it's going to be ugly. And this might seem like not a particularly fun thing to base a series of coming of age exciting fantasy novels about, but I guarantee you that the dark psychological trips through the human condition are balanced out perfectly well with wonderful adventure, heroic moments shining in the darkness.
Oh,
Well,
yeah, absolutely. Just real quick, because I want to say it's not just the CSA in the book. You're also showing parental neglect, like Jocko's story, which I think we should touch a little bit on that in a minute. His dad bailed on him and started a new family and didn't even try to help him. Like, that's flat out neglect. I
You
mean,
would be
there's
amazed at how many young boys have had that happen to them.
yes, I actually do know. I personally know some people in my life that happened to, and it's friggin' horrible. It's awful. And I mean, like I said, we've been talking about the slavery and the sex abuse. Like, we need to talk about the neglect and the parental failure too, because Jocko was also abused. It's not the same abuse that you saw Leo and Nea go through, but holy shit. The same thing with Zarigan. Zarigan's dad was a nut job. Sorry guys, spoiler alert. Actually, no, maybe I should. Just Zarigan's dad was an absolute friggin' nut job, and
Both of
she
them.
got neglected too because she was in a gilded cage. I mean, she literally was the epitome of what you see what happens with wealthy kids. If you work
actually,
in a school, yeah.
I flashed on, honestly, Jasmine in Disney's Aladdin.
Yes.
She's desperately wanting to get out, to live, to see the world, and is kept secluded and isolated to where when she finally breaks free, she doesn't know what the fuck she's doing.
Yeah, one of
Well,
my
yeah.
favorite examples of that, and this might out me as being a youngin with bad taste, but Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite,
I love that game.
Yes, I love that game.
literal gilded cage.
Yes,
Yes.
literal.
No,
But
the only difference between Jasmine and Zarigan is at least Jasmine's dad loved her.
Right.
yeah. I just gonna bring up one more thing real quick, and then we will continue on the topic of neglect. One thing I really, really, really appreciated about your writing, your stories, and how you're doing this is though everybody is a character. Of every protagonist, all of our heroes, the villains, everybody is well-rounded. And though you may not give the entire backstory of the character, you can tell that they have a history and they grew up and they were children once, if they're now adults when we meet them, and other things like that. But just because they are well-rounded doesn't make them misunderstood villains, or it's like, oh, there's no such thing as villains, it's in it. No, there's freaking villains in your story. And I think what the other message, or overarching message, seems to be, from my point of view, is choice. Is, yes, you can come from a rich family, you can come from being dirt poor, you can, the vagabonds, live day to day, with, just the cloak around their shoulders. That you doesn't matter, what choices you make. It is your choice, and your choice to live that life and to treat others the way you choose to do so. And that is another theme that I think is lacking in a lot of modern fiction, is choice.
Yeah,
That's
if I
actually
were to say that there were two themes from Spark that go through the whole series, choice would be one, because in Spark we see that the choices Seiryu made, I think it's safe enough to spoil Spark because Spark is 5 years old now. Is the choices he made destroyed Leo's life and destroyed an entire country, and he ran from those choices and he lied about them, and that's the other big theme that you'll see in Flare is truth, and that's something Leo feels really, really passionately about more than anything else is truth, is honesty, because he was lied to his entire life, and he rejects that. He is an all or nothing kind of person who wants to live the one truth that he sees, the truth.
I was going to say that one thing you also have in your book about choice is, you don't get to choose your family, but you can choose your own family. That's something I noticed about all the characters too, even going back all the way to Spark. Leo's parents, they chose their family and they chose to live their life. And I always say it wrong. Seiryu?
Yep.
I always want to say Seiryu.
Nah, that's okay.
Seiryu?
It's all
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, say are you?
You know, he came from a wealthy background. He was basically the medieval version of a college frat boy wandering around and, you know, jumped in. Like the Vagabonds, they're all a family, but that's the family they've chosen. That's not that they've been born into. And that's what I love about the Vagabonds. And that right now you have this small little family of 4 kids that seem to have a lot of crazy aunt and uncles that sometimes help.
One of them's a bird, one of them's a fish, one of them's covered in tattoos, you know, but they all care about them.
Yeah. Oh, you know, actually, well, I'm about to jump onto another, something I want to point out also about cerulean flare. All the other species that exist in this world are finally coming together too.
Yeah, that was something I really wanted to do more of in Spark and Embers, but just did not have the space in the plot to include. You know, I wanted to have more stuff with the Coccolith is the only mariner we've seen in so long. You know, what are they? What are they? What are they like? What's their culture? What do they do? Why have we never seen one? We've seen lots of Aranis, but we've never really had an interaction with them. We don't know about how they, you know, enforce their laws, for example, how they might chase a pair of fugitives who may have committed some nebulous crimes across Fortuna. Maybe read the book and find out what that is. But
I know what it is.
we learn about the Mariners, we learn about the Aranis, and we learn a little bit more about the Fair Isles. Janelle, you haven't gotten to that part yet. But there's
but I know
more.
It's coming because they've been talking about, you know, where they came from. They were talking about what happened in Embers with Jocko's uncle and what they were trying to cure and the horrible shit that poor young man went through. Yeah, so the more that they've been talking about it, I was like, okay, I'm going to get an answer for these guys now too. So I have an answer right now for 2 of the 3.
Yeah. And you even get a little explanation as to one of my favorite chapters from the Crimson Spark that never really got an explanation. Who or what are the Spook Legion?
Oh my god, that was such an amazing reveal.
You know, it was something that my both my editors, Kat and Aaron, told me. You know, this is something that might need to be expanded upon, if not now, then later. These creepy little monsters that attack Nea and Kane in the woods. What are they? Where do they come from? They're kind of creepy. They're interesting.
They're very interesting.
In Flare, we finally get to find out what they are, where they come from, and why they're all why they are the way they are. And it also ties into the mythos of the Vagabonds, and there's more to the Vagabonds than just a group of homeless swordsmen. There are rules, there are laws, there are consequences.
Okay, I'm going to go super nerd on you for a minute. Were the Spook Legion based on the Watchers in the Dark for the Dark Angels from Warhammer?
No, I'm afraid the Spook Legion are based off of the creepy little monsters that Paul Bunyan encounters.
Oh, okay.
The ones that get all tangled up and have to spend the next 100 years untangling themselves. They are named for one of my favorite Doc Savage novels.
Really?
Yep, The Spook Legion. Great book. You should totally read it. You should totally read all the Doc Savage novels. But you'll notice that I do throw in a few just straight up stolen names from classic literature, including Zerigan's Tormented, The Whisperer in Darkness. That's my favorite H.P. Lovecraft story.
I thought so.
Yeah, but the way that your setting is for this book series, it would make sense to have names from our Earth on that Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an alternate Earth.
Yeah, it is. And you know, you may notice some things with the way the races of Fortuna are not quite like the races in something like, say, Shannara or Middle Earth. You know, We don't have the standard fantasy races. We have things that you might recognize. You have, the creatures that look like men that live in the sea. You have the bird people, but you don't have, the elves and the dwarves. You have things that kind of echo them, but you never actually quite have them. There's a lot of the actual lore from Vagabond Legacy comes from North American cryptozoology of all things.
But that's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it
okay.
really is.
totally
I
see
like
it
that.
now. I totally see it now. I should have recognized it. I was actually thinking of the how like you described the mariners, and I was thinking of some of the what are they called? The yokai for Japanese mythology. So
Yeah, like
I was wondering if
the
I was
kappa.
thinking of kappas, tango, things like that. I was channeling that, but now you say North American cryptozoology. It's like, oh yeah, duh.
But, the yokai, the cryptids, and the fae all kind of echo each other in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very much so. Very, very much so.
I think I've exhausted my note. Oh, nope. There's one giant item that I forgot to. This is consider this a warning for everybody, but this is a much more lighthearted warning than the kinds I usually give about my fiction. I can
Okay.
safely say with all my heart, and I'm very happy to announce this, that the Cerulean Flare is in fact a kissing book.
It's a kissing book.
Oh, okay. I got it. I'm thinking, who's it gonna be? I think I know who it's gonna be, but
Do we have to have teams now?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We're gonna have teams. We're gonna have pairings. It's gonna be a whole shit show.
No. I mean, what's it called?
Team Jacob, Team Edward.
Yes, exactly.
Oh yeah, and I was very happy to finally write. It's funny, you writing, you write all this horrible stuff about like the dark heart of mankind, and then you get to the end and you got to write this scene where two characters who love each other, finally get together, and it's like, my keyboard isn't working anymore.
Oh no! Oh no!
But I really liked the way it turned out, and some people will be really, really happy, and some people will be really, really mad at me. But that's okay. That's kind of why I wanted to write it.
Well, that's also how it's always going to be when you start having love and stuff. People get very passionate about love. Yeah, no pun intended.
There's a whole website for it called fanfiction.net.
Yes, exactly.
Where if you don't get the pairing you want, well, damn it, you're going to write your own.
and you can
barring, and Kat, you mentioned this when you were working on Spark, and one of my editors, my proofreaders mentioned this, and he said, you said you might want to think about this is kind of popular in the genre. He said, I'm really happy you don't do this thing because this is so cliche. There are no love triangles.
Okay, good.
Thank you for doing that. I hate that.
Kissing book with no triangles.
I'll admit, when I was first reading Spark, I was thinking that's where you were gonna go with some of it, and I'm so glad you did not. And I'm glad that you're saying no triangles, because screw triangles. I hate triangles.
There was only one love triangle that I was cool with, and that was Robotech Macross, because the character I disliked got dumped, so it was all good.
Are you talking Min-Mei?
Yeah, fuck that bitch.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you. But with Robotech, that was different because he was still a young man. She was a young girl, and it's him, when he dumped her, it was him growing up and becoming an adult, and now going for the more mature woman. And I kind of saw that as a symbol of his progression from boyhood to man. So I once I realized that's what was going on, I was okay with him being with Min-Mei, because everybody has to have that relationship that you have when you're first figuring shit out.
Yeah, your first love. Yeah.
And
so her character. This isn't a Robotech episode, so that we'll save that for another time.
Well, bringing it back to this, I'm very curious. Now, don't get me wrong, audience. he has a story. It's not Love Pads the film here. He has an actual story, and the relationships are natural, and I love that. And the fact that these are children growing up, of course, they're going to start experimenting. I am very curious to see how they mature in that area, especially considering that all of them have been damaged in one way or another.
Yeah, that's sort of the big question. You have this triumphant moment at the end of Flare where these two characters finally get to have their moment, but uh, you know, what happens next? What happens from there? Nobody's really quite sure. We still have a long way to go, and characters that are here with each other now might not be when book 8 finally drops and the end is here.
That reminds me, I just have to bring this up real quick. I'm not going to spoil. I'm just going to say William has the balls to do the thing of killing off a major character in the first book, and the second that happens, it's like nobody's safe, and that is brilliant. I love the fact that that actually, William, I'm going to be honest, that put you in a whole new tier for me.
Oh well, thank you.
That
But I swear I don't get carried away with it. They're not going to start dropping like flies like certain other franchises I could
no,
name.
We're looking at you, Game of Thrones.
no, you don't pull a Martin, but I will have to say, there's the whole bit of John Carpenter's Precinct 13.
Ooh, good movie.
Wonderful movie, highly recommend it. Within the first 10 minutes, the bad guys kill a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Right there on screen, shoots her dead in the chest. You cannot mistake it. The second that happens, all bets are off. They're willing to kill a 10-year-old on screen, not off screen, conveniently. No, on screen.
Oh, it
Nobody
wasn't
can
just
say.
on screen. Like, you see the bullet go through her chest and the blood splatter everywhere.
Yeah.
John Carpenter feared nothing. He's a brilliant guy.
The movie almost wasn't released because they said they were going to
Because of
rate it
that.
X, because people forgot that X didn't just mean sex. It meant
It meant
excessive
violence.
violence too.
Mhm.
Yeah. The movie almost didn't get released. He's very silver-tongued, I guess, how he got that past censors, because
Oh,
it
yeah.
hits home. I mean, right there in the first 10 minutes, like, oh, it's this kind of movie. Okay. We're in
And
for a ride.
And then, holy crap. So it's become something that not many people have the balls to do, and even fewer people do it right. A lot of times it comes off as exploitive or excessive. And so I really appreciated William, because I'm thinking, oh, I know how this is going to end. We're going to, it's going to end, and we're going to have the scene at the end of A New Hope where we're getting the awards and everything will be happy. And then this one character dies, and I went, holy fuck.
I don't cry very often when I read books. I started bawling. I bawled for the rest of the final chapters of the book.
Yeah, you and me
Why
both.
the fuck is this happening?
Like, what are they going to do now?
I think it's probably safe to talk about what we were talking about. But
I didn't want to spoil who dies. So, but if you feel it's okay, then yeah, go ahead. It's just spoiler alert for those of you.
Yeah, since Embers and Flare are both kind of informed by this moment, they're both referring to the end of Spark, where Leo is hoodwinked into accidentally killing Seiryu, his mentor, his father figure. And it's a very shocking moment. I remember Vic called me on the phone. He said, "Is this real?"
I think my notes were, holy fuck.
No, you made me cry in the middle. I woke up my husband. He's like, oh God, this guy died. He was my favorite character.
But the thing is he had to die.
Yes.
And he had to die because, again, if he didn't die, this is just another Tiptoe Through the Tulips fantasy book where, everybody is safe and, nothing is really in danger, and, you're just a pedestrian on this journey. No, his death you're no longer a pedestrian and nothing is safe, which means as you are introducing new characters, William, any one of them could potentially die. Not that you're going to pull a George Martin, because I know you wouldn't, but it's still nobody's safe. Am I going to get my heart ripped out again?
This time, maybe not. It depends how much you get attached to certain characters. I
Oh
would,
no.
if I were to describe the tone of the last act of Cerulean Flare, I would say this adjective doesn't get used a whole lot to describe fiction, but I really like it. Triumphant. You're gonna see some people come back, some people that you haven't seen in a while. Maria Kane and Chiron, the King of Fortuna, both return, make an appearance.
Excellent. I like
You'll
Maria.
get a lot of closure with them, and you'll sort of get the idea of what happens next. Not spoiling what happens in the climax, but like, oh, where do the vagabonds go from here? This is they're kind of directionless now. What could possibly follow up with this? And what could follow up with this is going to be book 4, and book 4 is the most difficult thing I have ever written.
Now, I am going to ask, is the 4th book, I mean, the vagabonds may be directionless, but they still have to find artifacts, and they're not just in Fortuna, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, I can't wait. I'm sorry, I'm putting the pressure on William. I'm like, hurry up, get that shit done so I can read it.
Pressure makes diamonds, you know. I'm really happy with the way the Fortunan trilogy turned out. You know, it's Spark bears a lot of the first book, you know, the debut novel syndrome. It makes a lot of things that I maybe wouldn't do in hindsight, but I'm really happy that it was able to spin out into this really complete feeling set of books. I didn't think I'd get this far, so I appreciate it for everybody who's been reading.
I'm just excited that you have created this again. I am very picky in my reading. I have become very picky in my reading, and especially in again today's world where so much is has the message, and your books are. I'm not going to say that you set out to go against the message. It's your books are realistic, and we need more of that.
All I could ever really say about that is that all I ever did was write books in the style of YA that was popular when I used to read them, which was 2005 through 2009. And I really think that's the key ingredient. You know, just pretend you're in a different time.
I was going to say, your books remind me of the YA novels I read in elementary school and middle school. And even some of the good ones that you read in high school. It's like being a kid again and reading these books. It's wonderful.
Agreed.
Just because, like Kat said, I'm so tired of the message, and I can tell you right now, the kids are tired of the message too. They really are. There's a reason all they want to do is read manga.
Well, you don't talk down to your audience, and I think outside of manga, honestly, the best book that I can think of that has that same vibe of not talking down to and being completely honest with your audience is actually Michael Ende's Never-Ending Story.
Oh, and that's your favorite, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my absolute favorite fiction book. And one thing I liked about Never-Ending Story is that, Bastian he comes from a home where mom's dead, dad's abandoned him. He's fat, he's made fun of, he has everything against him. He's not good in school. He doesn't even have the benefit of, he's really good at math. No, he sucks at math. He's bad at everything, and all he wants to do is shut himself away from the world and hide and read his books. And when he goes to Fantastica, he fucks up a lot. He screws up. He screws up other people's lives. He makes really bad choices, and actually winds up losing his mind literally in Fantastica and almost doesn't make it out. And it was such a harrowing journey. I had never read anything like that before, where a child had to go through so much in order to grow up and find themselves and find their own personal step stool to get over it. And your book reminds me of that feeling I got when I read Neverending Story.
Well, thank you so much. That's about the nicest thing anybody said about it. And the whole crushing weight of dark fantasy hits different when it's put on the shoulders of somebody so young and full of hope and optimism, and they have to stand up against this tide of hopelessness. And that's really, to me, what I think dark fantasy is. And I think dark fantasy is sort of misunderstood a lot. I think people think that it's an excuse for fantasy to be ugly and unlikable, but I think that there's more to it than that. I think that the ugly and the unlikable have to be juxtaposed, because the darkness makes the hero's actions and the hero's kind of moral stand against the darkness more impactful and more important.
You know how, Kat, you said that his books remind you of the Neverending Story. For me, they remind me of Lloyd Alexander's Black Cauldron series,
which is the best compliment anybody could ever give me. Those are my favorite books of all time, and that was what I wanted to write.
Well, you've done a fantastic job. You truly have. I mean, like I said, I being the fangirl I am, I'm putting pressure on you. You're like, I want more, please.
Tapping the vein here, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the best compliment I can give you, is that I'm impatient, because I get so excited. It usually takes me depending on how busy I am once I pick up the book, with the exception of this one, it usually takes me between 24 to 72 hours to go through your book. Like, I won't put it down unless I have to, be a responsible mother and feed my kid.
That's something people say, and that's simultaneously like the best possible thing to happen and the worst possible thing to happen, because you have like a yearly release schedule for this. You get your fix, and then you got to wait 12 more months till the next one comes out. And I guess that's probably one thing that puts people off starting a series when it's not all the way complete.
Well, the thing that puts people off, honestly, is you get writers like George Martin, where winter's been coming for the last 40 years. They haven't, they don't finish what they started. I know that's something that Raltz talks about a lot, is that his series will have an end. He already has it, in his head. He just has to put it down. And I know, William, that was one thing you and I talked at length about, was, okay, where are you going? How many books do you have? What are your plans to make sure that there is an end? And so, I know that you are going to finish this.
Well, I know Martin didn't do that. Something I appreciate about Robert Jordan is he already had the end of the book planned out before he wrote the rest of the series. And even when he was dying, he had a backup plan. But Martin hasn't done any of that. And it's driven everybody nuts. And I honestly think we're never going to get that book. Like, that's it.
I think the reason that, I don't know, this series sort of clicks with me a bit easier, because I outline my stories in 3-act structures, just because that's just how I see all media. But also, so each individual story is 3 complete acts. Each book can be read, I think, by themselves and still appreciated. They're all complete stories with their own antagonists, their own internal conflict. But if you look at the series as a whole, you have Act 1, which is the Fortuna trilogy, and then you have the 4 books after that, which are the Act 2 and Act 3. And I think people are gonna the 5 books after that, Act 2 and Act 3. You'll see the overarching plot start to develop. There is, in fact, an overarching plot, I swear, where you'll see everything building to a point, and then it'll end. And I have it all outlined and planned out, and it's ready to go. It's just a question of putting it on paper. And barring any kind of nightmarish, last book splits in two because it's too big or something like that, I think 8 is probably the safe bet.
And I think that's actually a very reasonable size, really.
Yeah, you don't have to pull a Robert Jordan and have like 12 books.
And isn't one of them prequel?
Yeah, actually, no, there's more. There's not just 12 books. I think there's also like a ton of novellas and short stories that he wrote too.
Wow. Yeah,
The
see,
only reason I know this is
even if I had the time to do that, I don't think I'd have the amount of ideas necessary.
yeah, that I will say for Robert Jordan, I think that he had a main path, but then he started getting sidetracked by his own imagination and really did some hardcore world building, which is why I think that it's like a 12-book series.
Yeah, world building, and I've heard about that. I'm not super familiar.
No,
I kind of just let things develop as they go. I have an idea of what the world looks like, and then the story tells the audience that. It doesn't. I don't have like a big document about how all the lore works and all the functionalities of everything. It just kind of comes as it goes, and people, you get the world building as the characters do. That's one of the reasons Leo and Nea were outsiders. They weren't from the archipelago.
But I like the fact that everything is vague, including the post-apocalyptic history, the cataclysm that happened. Everything is vague. That makes you want more. You want to know. And because it does suck when you're reading a book of any genre in fiction, and all of a sudden, like, the entire world is laid out for you. You know everything. Like, you're not learning about it. It's just there. It's kind of, oh, that takes some of the fun away of discovering what this world and this setting is about. Whereas in this trilogy, everything is still vague, and it's nice to see as they travel, they're discovering brand new places, and every place looks different. So yeah, I mean, world building is good for maybe like RPGs, tabletop RPGs, or video games. But I think for especially fantasy, build as you go. Like Tolkien built as he went. He had it all mapped out in his head, but not everything was busted out in the first 3 books for the Fellowship, the Lord of the Rings. And you finally got like the appendix with the Silmarillion, where it kind of fleshed everything else out.
Yeah, and the example I always use, is sort of evergreen, is Wolverine. Wolverine stopped being interesting the second everybody knew where he came from and what his deal was. It was much more interesting to let your imagination fill in the gaps.
Yeah, I will say, as when we do our X-Men program on Wednesday, yeah, I think Wolverine was kind of the fun was taken away when you found out he was a sickly rich kid from Canada in the 1800s. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Moving on.
So, I think that's everything. I've touched on everything: kissing books, shame, boys and girls, friendship, Leo. Yeah, all the plot and stuff. So, is there anything you guys think I missed? Anything I should go into a bit more, or?
Any questions from the chat?
Yeah. Oh, Wolf, that's very flattering being compared to Dark Souls.
I would like to pay you another compliment. I do find it an interesting choice, and I applaud you for your ability to. I believe all 3 books your party is split. And what I mean by that is, yes, not
breaking
to
the number 1 rule of D&D, aren't I?
Yes, you are. You totally are. And what really got me, especially in Spark, was Nea and Leo were separated from each other for, I think, 80% of the book. And they had their own story arcs, but each of them is missing the other. And what I liked about the way you did that was it wasn't like, oh, okay, well, they're going over here now, or they're going over there now, and they're just they're just separate. And, oh, they're back together. No big deal. No, it really did feel like it was still one cohesive story. It's just, getting different perspectives in this world. And that's really hard to do. Usually people, when they split the party, it's because they can't think of what to do with certain people, or they got bored with a certain set. So it's like, oh, I'm going to have them go over there. And now I'm going to just follow these people. You don't do that.
I think the reason that works is the tagline of the series. I think it's because Leo and Nea and Jocko and Zergen are whole together, so that when you split them apart, you still have a complete story. It's a single thing that's happening to all of them, but they're able to sort of go about and do their own separate things, and it still feel significant because they're missing such an important part of themselves.
I was going to say this is going to be another compliment paid to you, because the splitting of the party, but it's functioning and it works, and it's definitely not trying to do something edgy and cool. I'm going to be a nerd here again. The War of the Lance trilogy, the Dragonlance trilogy, the Dragons of Autumn Twilight.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the first book, they're all together, and then the rest of the time they're split apart and they never come back together as a full group again. But it doesn't feel like, okay, I need to add some spice into my book. No, they all had to separate, and that's that.
No, that's a good analogy. That's a very good analogy.
And I'm pretty sure they were influenced. Tolkien, that Fellowship of the Ring is the only time they're all together.
Yeah, the breaking of the Fellowship is one of the most emotional sequences in fiction, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
And that makes that moment at the end of Return of the King, where they're all back together, it hits so much harder, and I love it. I wanted to do stuff like that. And it sort of happens in the Black Cauldron. You have these moments where, or not the Black Cauldron specifically, but in the Prydain books, Taran in particular will spend long times away from his friends, and he'll miss them, and so when you finally get them back together, it's like, yes, they need to stay that way, and then they never do. And it's just...
Yeah, no, I mean, Taran Wanderer is the best example of them all. When I think it's like the first third of the book, he's on the farm with the farmer who claims that he's his true father, and so he's away from everyone by himself for like the first third of the book.
Yeah, those books are just incredible. And speaking of kissing books, the moment at the end where he finally is like, Islandwe, let's get married, everybody, and me included, was just, yes, finally. God, that's that's kind of what I'm going for here with the whole kissing book thing.
It's like, finally, they did the thing.
What took you so long?
But that's such a good build-up, too. It's not like you're not being Daniel Steele, Amanda Quick romance, but, yeah, it's just like the two characters need to end up together at the end. They need to have their moment, and it's okay if it happens in the last chapter of the book.
Right.
The build-up is fun.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes you build up to something and you don't deliver on it, and you leave the audience frustrated, and coming back next time to see if maybe they'll get over themselves, or maybe something will be different. That kind of tension between characters can be really, really engaging in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think I'm all burned out. Is there anything left? I think we're good. No?
I think we're good. Janelle, did you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we covered everything. Like I said, I haven't finished it yet, but I'm probably going to stay up till like 2 this morning so I can finish it.
Okay, well, DM me when you do. I want to hear what you think.
Okay, I can do that.
So you can get Vagabond Legacy in its entirety right now, digital on Amazon, or paperback or hardcover. Whichever you prefer, the whole series is there. You can also get VCW and VCW2 paperback or audio. Those are both out. You can get those now. Next month, the second audiobook for Vagabond Legacy, The Opal Embers, read by Vic Mignogna, Edward Elric, Broly, Tamaki Suo, is going to release, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you. I get to go back through Opal Embers all over again, which is a great experience. And the month after that, I'm going to be starting my Kickstarter for The Other Fellow, which is my spy novel, my send up to Cold War spy fiction, my love letter to Ian Fleming and James Bond, and that'll be June.
Ooh.
So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Amazon. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Mr. Will Hastings, same with Instagram, or you can go on my website, tgrpress.org, and subscribe to my mailing list there. I think that's everything. Yeah.
So go check him out today. Go pick up your copies of William's books. They are awesome. You won't regret it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us once again for the Writers' Room. Thank you, William, very much so, for continuing to give us wonderful books.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for your support. I really appreciate you having me on and letting me talk about all this. It's great working with all of you, and it's great to share it with the awesome people who watch this show.
And thank you again, Janelle, for joining us too.
Yes, much appreciated.
Oh, anytime.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.